All right, now we're on to the learning target number 3. Okay, and now we're just doing the same thing we did in 1 and 2, only now we're going to do division of fraction by fractions. Okay, so it's the same thing we've been doing, exact same, just it's going to be slightly different. Okay, so let's go ahead and flip into our notes to page, I don't even know what page, it'll say learning target 3 at the top. It's right after these. We did these or fraction by whole numbers. Okay, so how these work, these are actually not difficult. It's really easy, because as you're going to find out, these numbers are really easy. Like this, it's really hard to see there, but it's 1/2 divided by 1/4. Okay, now one thing you're going to notice, one theme that you're going to see, like this one's 2/3 divided by 1/6, and this one down here is 3/4 divided by 3/8. What I'm trying to show you guys is, as you look down through there, the one thing that all these got in common is, these numbers are very easy. Okay, in other words, this 2 can become, 4 is a multiple of 2, 6 is a multiple of 3, 8 is a multiple of 4. So in other words, you can make this 8. Okay, you'll see what I mean here in a minute. But this method will only really work in certain situations, which is why I get students will ask me, well, why are we learning it this way? Well, this is going to really teach you an understanding, okay? Now, for those of you that get onto the enriched, I'm going to teach you how to do any fraction modeling, okay? But that's going to be up for another discussion, and we got to get past this. So this isn't hard, because the beautiful thing about every single thing that we've done, whether it be learning target number 1, which was, whole number by fraction, right? Yeah, whole number by fraction. So 5 divided by 1/5. That was learning target number 1. And then learning target number 2 was like taking 1/5 divided by 3 or something like that. Fraction divided by whole number. The key thing here I'm trying to get you guys to see is the first step in every single one of these modeling problems is we modeled the dividend. That is first. Okay, on this one, remember, we'd have drawn 5 boxes out. Okay, we'd have drawn 5 out, then we'd have cut them into fifths. Hopefully you remember that. This one, we would start with a rectangle, we'd cut into fifths. We'd cut our cake into fifths. Remember, 1, 2, 3, 4 fifths, and then we'd shade one of them. Okay, now we don't have to go through all that again, but the reason I'm showing you that is because this is the same method. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with our strip. Okay, now we're going to model our dividend. Well, we have 1/2 of, I guess you could think of it as cake or something like that if you wanted to. So we have our 1/2. Okay, sorry. We have our 1/2. That's how much we have left. Now, we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing. We're going to ask the question, how many groups of 1/4 are in 1/2? So what we got to do is now we got to model 1/4. Now, this is a little bit different. This is where it's going to get a little bit confusing. But think of it like this. You're just taking it and you're going to cut this thing into fourths. Okay? And let me just do it and then I'll explain myself. As you can see now, our original strip, our original rectangle that we started with, and I'll outline that in yellow, that's our original one. Now think about it. Don't we have it cut into fourths? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's fourths. So all we did was we started with 1/2, but then we just proceeded to cut it into fourths. Now let's answer this question. How many groups of 1/4 do you see? I see one group of 1/4. I see two groups of 1/4. So how many 1/4 are in 1/2? There are 2. Okay, very, very simple. Now I know the process is a little bit different. It's kind of difficult to remember which process I use because I wish I could tell you that one process would work 100% of the time. It just doesn't. Okay? You gotta make sure you understand what we're doing. So we started with our whole strip. We cut it in half, and then we proceeded to cut it into fourths. And then we asked the question that we asked from way back in learning target number 1. Okay, we were asking how many groups of 1/4 are in 1/2. Okay, going back to here, you don't have to flip back here, you can just look at mine. Here, we did 2 divided by 1/4. We asked the question, how many groups of 1/4 are in 2? How many groups of 1 are in 2? Or 1/4 are in 2. It's the same process. Only now you're starting with a fractional amount. That's a little bit different. Okay, get back to the correct page. Okay, now let's check it using the algorithm. 1/2, it's going to be 1/2 times 4/1, which is going to give us 4/2, which equals 2, which is what we said. Okay, let's do another. Now, again, this won't work for any fraction, so you can't just pick any old fraction. You can't come up here and do, okay, 3/7 divided by 1/19. You're not going to be able to do it. I promise. Not like this. There's a little bit different of a method we're going to have to use. But right now, what I'm trying to get you guys to see is that when you're dividing by, it's weird to think about, because you're taking the number 1/2, which is a partial, and you're dividing it by another partial, but yet you're getting a whole number, and that's so hard for students to wrap their head around. Okay? Normally, all of our lives, we have divided. 6 divided by 3, we always get a smaller number than we started with. Okay? We always did. And that's what I'm trying to get you guys to see, is that when you divide by a partial, you're asking how many groups of that. Okay? Or how many of that groups are there? If there's 1/4 groups. Okay? Either way, the question's correct. So now let's do this one. Okay, so I'm going to start by, this is 2/3 divided by 1/6. I'll rewrite it since it's hard to see. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to model my dividend, my first number. So here we go. So I model it. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to cut it into sixths. And again, I'm cutting it into sixths because of the denominator. So here we go. If it's already cut into thirds, just think. Just cut each third down the middle. Now ask the question. How many 1/6 are there in 2/3? There is 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. There are 4 groups of 1/6 in 2/3. Okay, 4 groups of 1/6 and 2/3. Now, if we want to use the algorithm here, dividend always stays the same. It's 2/3. Division becomes multiply. 6/1 is 12/3, which ultimately equals 4. 12 divided by 3. 3 goes into 12 4 times. Okay? So that's that. Alrighty? Let's do this problem. This is where it gets a little bit harder. Okay, we got 3/4, and we're dividing it by 3/8. First thing is, go ahead and model the dividend, right? We always do that first. Okay, so I'm going to cut it into fourths, obviously. I'm going to shade. Shade it like that, I guess. Okay, now I'm dividing it by eighths, or 3/8, but I'm still cutting it into eighths. So we get, there's our thing. So now I'm just going to cut the entire thing into eighths. So that means if it's already in fourths, think about it, I can cut each fourth in half. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you count this, and you don't have to show it with a dotted line. You could just, I mean, if you really wanted to, well, I'll do it on the next one. I'll leave these for now. But you could just, draw a solid line through there. In other words, you could go like this and just do, okay, here's your fourths. If you wanted, you could just draw a solid line. I don't really care. Okay? Because still it's eighths. But I like to show it with the dotted because it shows you're dividing it up into that. Now we're asking the question, not how many 1/8, we're asking how many groups of 3/8 do you see? I see 1, 2, 3. That is one group. Okay? Then I have 1, 2, 3. That is one group. So how many groups are there? there are two groups of 3/8 in 3/4. Let's check it using the algorithm. 3/4 divide becomes multiply. That becomes 8/3. This is 24 over 12, which equals 2. Okay? Let's do this one down here. A plank is 4/5 of a meter. A worker cuts it into some pieces, each of which is 1/10 meter long. Okay? So your 4/5 plank, 4/5 of a meter, and we're dividing it into 1/10 pieces. Okay? So let's model the dividend. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and shade my 4/5. There's my plank. That's how much I have. Again, this whole thing would be, oopsie. This whole thing would be representing 1 meter, right? Because it says 4/5 meters. Okay. So I have my 4/5 shaded. Now I'm dividing it into tenths now. So if it's already cut into fifths, remember, I can just cut each section in half. Here, I said I was going to do this one like this. Instead of doing the dotted lines, I can just do these. Just go like this. And that's fine too. And just because I'm just doubling it here, so now I'm just cutting it into tenths. So now we're looking, how many groups of 1 do you see? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 groups of 1/10 in 4/5. Okay? Use the algorithm. That's going to become 4/5 times 10 over 1, which is 40 over 5. 40 divided by 5 is indeed 8. Okay? Let's go to the next page. Okay? I want you guys to go ahead and pause and try this for me, please. Okay? All right. Here's number 7 that I just told you to do. Okay, here's my strip. Okay, I cut into fifths. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I can shorten that up a little bit. Okay, there's my fifths. Now I'm going to take it and I'm going to cut it into tenths. So 1, each little fifth is getting cut in half, which is now creating tenths. Okay, whoops, I totally forgot to shade. Hopefully you guys caught me on that. Forgot to shade that. There you go. Now I'm looking for threes, groups of 3. Okay, I see 1, 2, 3. That right there is one group. Uh-oh, we have this little sliver right here. This is what I haven't talked about yet. So I'm glad we are now. We have a problem here because we're looking for groups of 3. Now I know that I have one entire group, right? I have one entire group. But then I have one little sliver. That isn't one group. That is a partial group. If 3 makes a whole group, and we only have 1, then wouldn't this be 1 1/3? Does that make sense? I'll let that sink in for a second. Okay. I had one whole group. So let me model this one more time real quick here. I'll do it again, just so we're seeing it, because this is where it can get a little bit tricky. And I hope you guys went ahead and tried it on your own before, so that, and if you didn't know, then at least you thought. Okay, so here we go. There's 1 shaded, 2 shaded. There's my 2/5. Okay, now I'm going to cut each one of these in half and just make it into tenths. I know that I have one group, or I mean not one, I have one sliver there. That's one of the 3. I have 2. Now I have 3. That right there represents one whole group. And then again, I have that sliver right there. That's 1 1/3. I have a whole group. I have 3 out of 3. And then I have 1/3 of a group. Okay? Okay, now this one gets a little bit different. Okay? I have my 3/4. I was going to have you do this one, but I'll just go ahead and do it just to make sure that we're all clear. Okay? Whoops, didn't mean to do that. I apologize. Okay, I'm going to shade my okay, there's my 3/4. Again, I'm modeling the dividend just like we did before. Now I'm just going to say, how many groups of 3/16? Well, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to cut it into 16ths now. So before, all this has said is this was 8. And then it was like, oh, I'll just cut it right down the middle. Well, now we got to cut the entire strip into 16ths. Okay, so that means this thing's got to be cut into 16ths. So not only do you have to, cut it, you have to cut each fourth into fourths. There's no real easy way to explain that. Okay, we got to make sure that, in other words, just think of it this way. If I told you to cut this into, if I said, model this number right here, if I said 5/16, you would take it and you would cut it into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's not enough spots. 15, 16. You would cut it into 16 pieces. Well, that's all you're doing here. Okay? So when we do that, I'm going to do it with dots again. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is already there. It's the red one. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit different. I hope this makes sense. And it should, because think about it, all I'm doing is cutting in the entire thing into 16ths. 1/16, 2, 3/16, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16ths. Again, this whole thing here represents one whole. And 16/16 as one whole. Remember, 16 over 16 equals 1. So that's all I did. Now we're asking the question. Here we go. How many groups of 3 are there here? Groups of 3. I see a group of 3 there. That's 1. 1, 2, 3. I see a group of 3 there. Okay. Back and forth between these colors. I see a group of 3 there. That's another 1. I have a group of 3 right there. That's 1, I think. Yes. Okay. I have a group of 3. Okay, hang on a second. I think I did something wrong. Apologize. I think I was looking at it wrong here. I didn't do it wrong. I'm sorry. Let me go back and write that. Get my shading, my little boxes back on there. If it's going to let me. Okay. There we go. And as you can see, that's what it was. I was doing it right. I don't know what I was thinking there for a minute. I was looking for groups of 3. I had one group there, one group there. I had one group there, and I had one group there. I can't worry about this over here because it's not there. We only had 3/4 to begin with. So how many whole groups do I have? 1, 2, 3, and 4. The answer is 4. Okay? If I use the algorithm, 3/4 times 16 over 3 is 48 over 12, which means 48 divided by 12, which is 4. Okay? Let's do one, and let's not. Let's just call it there. Okay? I will see you guys tomorrow.